All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Jason DeBono, Vice President of NewView Trust Company, doing what I think is probably the best part of my job is getting to come out and share some educational content. So health savings accounts for me are a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I've been using an HSA for almost 7 or 8 years, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through it today. But for those that maybe haven't seen one of the webinars or don't know who I am, I've been with NewView for 14 years, and so I've gotten to see a little bit of everything over my time and tenure here. And I think one of the, in my opinion, best well-kept secrets beyond self-direction, which is already a best well-kept secret, is HSAs. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is everybody comes to us and they start with investments. And they say, you know, I heard I can buy real estate, or I heard I can issue a loan, or I can invest into my neighbor's lawn care business, or whatever that is. And all of those things are fantastic. It's what I love about self-direction. But what often gets overlooked is the vehicle in which we get there. Because self-direction is not a one-size-fits-all. It doesn't have to be a traditional IRA. You can self-direct multiple accounts. And what we're finding through our educational empowerment and the classes that we do, health savings accounts are playing a much bigger role in society in general because they've grown in popularity alongside high deductible health insurance, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. But most importantly, they represent a phenomenal vehicle to go out and use for self-direction. We'll talk about how that works as we go today. So for everybody that's joining us over the internet, right on your screen there should be a Q&A section or a questions section. Feel free, as you can see, I keep looking back. It's because I can see that on my screen. So if you do have any questions, just simply type those in and they'll pop up here and we'll get those read aloud for the benefit of everybody else. But we encourage the back and forth dialogue, so please use that functionality as questions arise. So I'm going to start. So this slide is really kind of, you know, I talked a little bit about the HSA and why it's so popular and why I think it's the best plan that exists if you qualify, right? But if you take a look, and we'll actually kind of think about this starting below the HSA, if you go back to any IRA or 401k product, whether it's traditional Roth, SEP, simple, 401k, defined benefit plan, they're all taxed on the way in or the way out. So if it's a Roth plan, we pay tax to put money in. If it's a pre-tax account, we pay tax to take it out. The HSA is the only plan that exists where we can get a tax benefit to put the money in and take it out tax-free. So let that sink in. So if I put $3,000 into my HSA, I get a tax deduction for that, which is awesome. Works just like a traditional IRA. But what's amazing is, unlike a traditional IRA where I get taxed when I withdraw it, if I take it out for qualifying medical expenses, I pay no tax. The other big piece of that is withdrawals can occur at any time, and we're going to talk about this in some examples. But so in an IRA, I can't touch the money without penalty till 59 and a half. In my HSA for qualifying medical expenses, I could take money out theoretically the day after I set up the account for qualifying medical expenses, tax-free. And we'll talk about the saving versus spending mentality of an HSA. But that in and of itself is probably the biggest or most advantageous benefit that these HSAs have. And that's about as good as it gets. So let's talk a little bit about HSAs. So the first piece is NewView does not sell insurance. We're not in the insurance business. We are account custodians. We hold HSA accounts. But to be able to have an HSA has to do with whether or not you have high deductible health insurance. And if you'll see on the slide, the minimum deductible amounts to qualify is $1,350 for an individual plan and $2,700 going up to $1,400 and $2,800 respectively in 2020. So what does that mean? That means that if you go and you set up a high deductible health insurance plan and the deductible for you is above $1,350 or above $2,700 if it's a family plan, then you can couple your insurance with a savings plan. Now, here's the idea of why these plans were created and how they've grown in popularity. The first thing is, this doesn't solve the insurance problems that exist today. And I think no matter what side of the aisle people sit on, we all agree insurance is a challenge. It's an issue. But one of the things that HSAs do is they create an environment in which you can save and increase your deductible to reduce your premiums. So for a lot of these plans, and I would encourage you, if you haven't crunched the numbers, you should be crunching your insurance numbers every year. And you should be determining how much money do you save to raise your deductible. So think about this. Anyone on this webinar today have a car insurance deductible of 50 bucks, 100 bucks? No. 250? Probably not. What are your car deductibles? 500, right? Well, why do we do that? We do that because we drive premiums down, and you know what? If I get into a little fender bender and it costs me 300 bucks, I'll just pay it out of pocket. But I get to save every single month. Yet, with our health insurance, we don't view it the same way, right? And it baffles me to some degree because some of the savings in high deductible health plans can be staggering. So to give you an example, if you go out and you price insurance, and I'll just use me as an individual, right? If I go price insurance and let's just say it costs $200 a month for a plan, a copay type plan. Now there's no high deductible, which is great. So my out of pocket is very limited, but my premium's 200 bucks a month. If I take that same idea and say, well, what would happen if I had to pay first? So high deductible health insurance means I'm out of pocket till I hit my deductible or my max out of pocket, right? That means that I got to spend the money. The benefit is my premium comes down. So let's use the example that you go and you get that insurance now becomes $125 a month, but you have a $2,000 deductible. If you do the math, you're saving 75 bucks a month. Over the course of 12 months is roughly $1,000, give or take a few dollars. If you take that savings of $1,000 and you put it into your HSA, here's the risk and reward. You are risking another $1,000 out of pocket because at the end of the year, right, calendar year, you would have an insurance plan and you'd have $1,000 in your HSA, right, assuming you never spent it. So what you're at risk of is having medical expenses hitting your out-of-pocket, let's say at $2,000, right? And putting you in a position now where you have to come out of pocket for that extra $1,000. So that's the risk. The reward is that you get to the end of the year and you had nominal, if any, medical expenses, and guess what? You now have $1,000. That money doesn't disappear. This is not like flexible spending accounts, or they used to call them cafeteria plans, where use it or lose it. This money stays. So now you have $1,000 in savings. And when you do that for another year, $2,000, or maybe you put a little extra money in, contribution limit's $3,500. So I could choose to put away $300 a month, or $290 a month to get to $3,000. I get a deduction on my taxes for that. And at the end of the year, if I didn't use it, I now have $3,500 in there. So there are some great ways to get extra money into these plans beyond what you may even need to spend inside a high deductible health insurance program, depending on your medical needs. So I am not a doctor. I am not an insurance agent. So I'm not advocating that everybody move their plan to high deductible so they can have an HSA. But what I am advocating is that everybody on this call should be considering that. And the numbers should speak for themselves. One more story on this. My brother called me about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and he works for a larger company, and they switched their insurance program to an HSA. And he had the choice, copay or high deductible health program. So he calls me and says, hey, I don't even understand the difference between these, never really had to deal with it. This is what my insurance has always been. What's the benefit or what's the option? And it's been a few years, I don't remember the numbers, but I do remember his company gave him $500 to move to high deductible. And they do that because they want to incentivize people to be on high deductible plans. It's less expensive for the employer. And his plan saved him, it was probably pretty close to $100 a month to be on that high deductible plan. So what he got for moving to that plan, because he's going to pay the same amount as he paid before, is the way I look at it. So if you have a $200 insurance program per month and you move to $100, then the other $100, what you were paying, should be paid to your HSA. Otherwise, you're going to not put it into the HSA, have a medical expense, and be in trouble. So I said, his name's Chris. I said, Chris, if you pay the same amount that you were paying, that's $200 a month, give or take a few bucks, you're going to end up with $1,200 in your HSA because $100 a month is no longer being paid to insurance. It's going into your HSA, and your employer is going to give you $500. That's $1,700 against a $2,000 deductible. It's a no-brainer. He's at risk of saving $1,700 and at risk of losing $300. Now, I think anybody would tell you that's a pretty good risk-reward profile. And my brother has not had a medical expense other than a doctor's appointment here, there. And a lot of those preventative wellness checkups are actually covered, right? But he hasn't, my brother has almost $4,500 or $5,000 in his HSA. So now my brother could max out, he could go to the doctor with a broken leg, have surgery, right? And still have money in his HSA. He's now past that critical point of actually having a surplus. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how you can manage that surplus and put that surplus to good work. So when you look at this, again, please don't construe what I'm saying as being is telling you that high deductible health insurance is the end all be all only way to insure yourself. I certainly am not saying that. However, what an amazing opportunity if the profile of high deductible health insurance can suit you. And that's an individual decision based on your own insurance needs. But I can tell you now, if you're someone that doesn't go to the doctor, you know, doesn't have pre-existing type conditions or have things that cause you to have to go frequently, these plans make tremendous sense. And that's because I'm a saver. And we'll talk about the savings component of this here. So one of the things that we talk about with people with HSAs is you have to decide from an HSA standpoint if you're a saver or a spender, right? And I'll tell you the difference. So here's the way that an HSA works. So I set up my high deductible health insurance, and then I go somewhere and open an HSA. Now I could go to your traditional custodians, right? Schwab, Fidelity, and open an HSA. You can go to banks, right? Very common, as you can see in kind of the debit card there model, right? So that you have this debit card. Or you can come to a self-directed custodian like NewView, where you're focused more on how you invest the money of your HSA, not how you spend it. So in this first model, with the debit card, the idea behind it is I go to the doctor says my bill's $112. I give them my HSA debit card and I paid $112. Doesn't come out of my pocket. I don't have to get reimbursed. It's just paid. And that's a tax-free distribution. The power of that is huge because you've been saving for those medical expenses, so you're not burdened, right, with money coming out of your pocket for it. You're actually paying it with money that you've saved. The drawback to that is you have just taken money out of a vehicle that's growing tax-free. So if you're a spender and you're only thinking about the spending side, you're ignoring that major, major item. If you're a saver like me, I want my tax-free money to work for me. So if I can go pay that $112 bill out of my pocket, right, that leaves $112 of taxable or of tax-free earnings working for me. Here's what's great, and if you'll see down here on the bottom, there is no timetable for reimbursement out of your HSA, so long as the medical expense occurred after the HSA was established. So if I establish an HSA today, and I went to the doctor tomorrow, and I paid a $300 bill, I can save the receipt of that $300, and at any point, I can go in and cash it in. The benefit of doing that is that $300 is working. If I'm investing it, I may make interest to cover my bill. And so the idea is that you let it build up, and then you take all these receipts that you've shoeboxed over the years, and then you go get the money out as needed. That's a powerful, powerful tool because it puts us all back into this saving mentality. And obviously life situations occur, causing people maybe to have to go pull out of their HSA because they can't wait, on their reimbursements any longer. But if you can't afford to pay the medical expenses personally and be reimbursed at a later time, you can reimburse yourself down the road out of interest and maintain the principal balance of your HSA for as long as possible. So it is a phenomenal tool. But if you take our clients are the savers. And the reason is, we're a self-directed custodian. The power of using NewView Trust Company for us holding your account is to be able to access investments like this. real estate, private equity, precious metals, promissory notes, private loans, notes and mortgages. Well, if you think about that, you can't exactly, if you've got a house in your HSA, turn around and go have a debit card, right? It's not liquid, whereas a lot of the debit card-based accounts are just sitting in cash, earning you no money. This is a way to make money, and for some of our clients, lots of it, right? And be able to go out and make investments. And when it comes to expenses, they have to be prepared that in the event they do have maybe something serious happens, they got to be prepared to maybe go pay the max out of pocket because their investments may be illiquid. So you have to be mindful of that when you set this up. If you're putting in, the money that you put in has to come out immediately for medical expenses, we're not a good source for you. We're not going to be a good tool for you. Our clients are the ones that save, but also have personal savings in the event they needed to go pay a few $1,000s personally, and they could get reimbursed maybe down the road when they were able to liquidate, or maybe there was rental income coming in. You get the idea. I've had an HSA, like I said, it's probably been 7 or 8 years. I've built up a significant balance, and I've made investments over the years, and people generally ask, their first question is, how do you make investments if you can only put $3,000 or $4,000 in a year? And the answer to that is very simple. I partner it alongside my 401k. So when I make an investment, I may I do a lot of promissory notes or private loans. I may do a private note, a $40,000 private note, and only 10% is my HSA. So you can partner these accounts alongside other accounts. But if I put $4,000 into a loan at 10%, it's making me $400 a year. If I spend less than $400 a year in medical expenses, I'm actually getting paid to save my money because I'm earning interest beyond what I need for qualifying medical expenses. So it is an awesome plan. But again, if you're going to come the route of NuView, then you need to really understand this from a savings perspective, and that its purpose is to be a saver. Let me pause there. Now would be a great time. I'm going to get a sip of water, but now would be a great time if you do have any questions to get those asked, and we'll get those addressed. I don't see any coming in yet. So the other powerful thing about HSAs from a standpoint of self-direction is, and I kind of mentioned this, but I'll elaborate a little further, is your ability to partner that with other investments. So if you have an HSA and you have a traditional IRA, and maybe you have an educational savings account for a child or grandchild, all three of those accounts can go out and make investments. And they can make investments right alongside each other, which is really powerful. And so a lot of times people think that, well, if I only own 5% of the investment, I'm not going to make any money. And if the return is 10%, it doesn't matter if you own 1 or 100% of the investment, the account's still making 10%. And over time, these accounts can be built up. Furthermore, these accounts can also, the family accounts can go up to, I think, $7,000 from a contribution standpoint. So as you start looking at these plans, you can really start to sock away some decent money. And it doesn't take but a couple of years of very little on the expense side, maximizing contributions to be able to sock some real money away into these. So as we wrap this up, and certainly if you have questions as we wrap up, we'll take them. I want to kind of maybe just summarize and hit a couple of the cliff notes for those that are joining us today on this HSA plan, and maybe how to start thinking about this differently. So the first step in the process is really to evaluate your own insurance needs, because really that's what starts the process. But when you're evaluating your insurance needs, it should be a point of comparison. So as I mentioned earlier, make sure that you're asking your insurance advisor, how much would I save to increase my deductible? And a lot of times there is a point where it makes sense, right? So you may raise it up a little higher than you would think you would want, but if you're saving 100 too, I mean, I've seen programs where people are able to fill their entire HSA for the year just off of what they're saving in their premiums. And that really depends on your insurance and your needs. And it's a difficult situation to navigate through that. So make sure that you have a good qualified insurance agent. It's important. If you don't find one, ask around. If your insurance agent is not asking you lots and lots of questions, they don't know enough about you to help you get insurance, and it may be time to find someone else. But once you're making those comparisons, take the delta of what your premium will pay, what it will be in a high deductible, and whatever that delta is, that's what you're seeding your HSA with. So you're no more out of pocket at that point, but remember, at the end of it, you get to keep what you don't spend. And I'll tell you a funny story on that. I got a call from my dentist. Great dentist, absolutely love him, but I got a call from his office, and one of the ladies that works here, she said, you know, hey, Jason, I just wanted to give you the heads up. It was towards the end of the year. You've got like $2,500 worth of insurance benefits on my dental insurance that you're going to lose at the end of the year. Do you want to schedule something? And I thought to myself, well, number one, what would I possibly schedule, right? Like, yeah, let's throw a root canal in there. You know, that sounds like an awesome way to utilize this money. But what really hit me was I bought the right to spend money. If I don't spend it, who wins? The insurance company. And last time I checked, there's a lot of big buildings in a lot of big cities with insurance companies' names on it. So what you're doing with an HSA is saying, I'm not going to prepay for the right to go. I'm going to pay as I use it. And for a lot of people, that mentality is tough for them to come to terms with because they're so used to going to the doctor, paying a $20 copay and moving on. But you'd be amazed that if it's between a $20 copay and maybe a $100 doctor visit, if you only go once a year or twice a year, it's only $150. You may save that in 1 month on a high deductible health plan. So I encourage you to go and take a look at that and evaluate and then make an informed decision. And at the end of that, if you say, Jason, you know what, it's not financially beneficial for me, the numbers just don't work, copay insurance is still best for me or my family, I've got kids, I get it. But today you're probably making that decision from an uninformed standpoint, meaning you haven't actually gone through and crunched the numbers. The second thing you also have to add in, and we haven't talked much about it, depending on where you are from a tax bracket standpoint, there's a deduction to put money into these. So if you're in the 30% tax bracket, you're getting 30% back. So if you put $3,000 into your HSA, it's like making $900 the day you put in. That's another major advantage to this HSA. And then you couple that with the ability to invest it into assets that for a lot of you, you may already be clients using your IRAs to go out and put them to work. And our clients do very well. And they do very well because they're smart about what they want to buy. HSA is simply another tool in the toolbox, right? Looks like a question or two have popped in. I'll get to those in just a second. So that's step one, determining if an HSA or a high deductible health plan is right for you. If the HSA or high deductible health plan is right, step two is you have to decide what type of HSA you want. Do you want an HSA that provides you instant access to your money so that when you go to the doctor, you can swipe the debit card? If you do, then you need to go find a bank or someone that will give you that because your mentality is this is a tool for me to buy my pay for my insurance, and that makes great sense. I completely get it, and there's lots and lots of people that utilize that, and it's a great tool if you believe that's best for you. We just can't help you with that. If you believe that this can be another tool to get you towards retirement, to build up more savings, and you want that money to be invested, and you're not worried so much about the couple $100 here and there, you'll take those reimbursements down the road, then we can be a great tool for you. And that's just a matter of setting up your account. And it works just like any other account that we hold. You direct us what to buy. It's held in the account. All the income comes into the account. All the expenses go out of the account. And everything's growing tax-free. It was on the slide, and I think it's worth mentioning. If you reach retirement age and you still have excess money in your HSA, and I get this a lot. So the first question, the first comment is usually, if you're worried about having too much money, you're focused on all the wrong things, right? We save to have too much money. That's its purpose. But the second thing is, if you think that your medical expenses are going to go down as you age, it's the total opposite. They go up as you age. So having that surplus at a younger age is great because it will benefit you in the long run. But let's just assume, and I hope for everybody, that you've saved so well and you've been so healthy that you've got a major surplus in your HSA. At age 65, you can withdraw it. You will pay tax on your distributions if it's not for a qualified medical expense. But you didn't pay tax on the way in. So it's like an extra traditional IRA, which is pretty sweet. But over the years, every doctor bill that you have that you shoeboxed, You may be able to go get 10 grand out of your HSA tax-free because you built up receipts over the last 10 years, right? 20 years, whatever that looks like. So it's a great plan from that perspective. Questions? All right, so I got a question about coupling. I mentioned educational accounts, and so we've got about 3 minutes left. Let me just go ahead and touch on those. So when we talk about saving for college, and I can speak for Florida, but I think most states work in a similar manner. And we do have an upcoming webinar. I don't think we have a date scheduled on educational savings accounts because they're a phenomenal tool as well. ESA accounts or Coverdell ESAs, they're a way to save for college. And so if you look at what traditional means are today, you have college prepay programs, right? I think every state has one. So I have an 8-year-old, and when college, the cost for college prepay for in the state of Florida was $283 a month until he turned 18. So we're doing the math on that, saying, man, that's like $3,500 a year, and all that buys is 4 years of university tuition, nothing else. That didn't seem like a good investment for me because over 18 years, putting in nearly $4,000 a month, you're talking about putting in over a long period of time close to $60,000, $70,000, right? I couldn't justify it. The second option you have is 529s. Those are state-sponsored plans. So the drawback to 529s, benefit is you can put as much money as you want. The drawback is it's a fund-based investment. So it's invested in the market in some capacity through a state-run fund. And so the returns can be hit and miss. And you have zero control over the money. I didn't like that. I don't like to put my money anywhere that I can't personally select each and every investment because I want to be able to react to the market. I don't want to wake up like this week when the market's done this, this, and this, and then question how much money, right, my son's going to have when it comes time for college. I've got promissory notes in my account at 13%, and guess what? They pay 13%, whether the market's doing this or not. So I like investments that give me that stability and confidence. The market doesn't do that for me. But if you're okay with it, the market may be a great place. That's what a 529 plan is. A Coverdell is a plan that allows you to put up to $2,000 a year. There's no tax benefit to contribute, so it's just like a Roth. And all of the money comes out tax-free for qualifying educational expenses. It can also be passed down to a sibling. So in the event, and my wife and I are expecting a baby girl in November. So what's great is in the event that our son gets a scholarship or whatever it may be and doesn't need all the money, we can now seed that down, right, to our daughter. And that's another major advantage. I give you that background to simply understand the plan. But what's great is, and I do this in my accounts today, my son Tyler's Coverdell educational account, my 401k, we have a self-directed 401k plan here at NewView, and my HSA all go make investments together. And so $2,000 a year. So the idea was over 18 years, $36,000, assuming we can afford to put it in every year, plus growth. And to me, that represents a pretty strong way to go out and get yourself through college. So that account will probably have close to $75,000 in it, if not a little bit more, hopefully, depending on some investments by the time that he's 18. And that seems like a pretty substantial amount of money on top of scholarships and other things to get himself through college. So that plan can be coupled. It can be invested. So if I buy a loan, 10% HSA, 10% Coverdell, and 80% 401k, the money's just split back in a prorated interest. All right, let's make sure I didn't miss anything here. And I think I see one other item. Whoops, sorry. All right, this says, if we want the HSA for savings and we have a high deductible health plan through the employer, we set up an HSA in lieu of an FSA through the employer or in addition. Our expenses always exceed our FSA. So the FSA is a flexible spending account. The HSA is a savings account. One is designed to be spent annually. One is not required to be spent annually. So going to your question as to whether or not the first thing, and I'm not an expert on the combination contribution limits if you have an HSA and an FSA. So I can't speak to that. That's something you're going to want to talk to your accountant about and find out if there's any eligibility income restrictions that would prevent that from happening. But your HSA, in theory, if you can have both, and I say that as an if, then you would put money into your HSA, you'd put money into your FSA, and then at the end of the year, or during the year, you'd obviously want to spend your FSA first because you lose that, and then you'd want to retain, if anything, your HSA on an annual basis. Great question, but something that you'll want to talk to your accountant on to make sure that there's no issue. And your employer benefits administrator through your employer may actually be able to answer that question for you as to whether or not you can have one or both. All right, well, at this point, I think we have addressed all the questions that have come in. I want to thank you very much for joining us today and taking at least 30 minutes of your time to learn a little bit about HSAs. I hope you find this information to be valuable, and I hope that you put it to good work, not all the way to the point where you have to go do it, but to the point where you feel compelled to call your insurance agent and crunch the numbers and see if it makes sense. If we can help any way with your questions, we're not advisors, but we understand these plans enough to walk you through it. Or if you have questions on the investment side or how to set everything up, we're happy to help you guys there. Contact info is all on the screen. So thank you guys very much for joining us, and we'll see you at our future webinar series. Thank you so much.